Okay, here we are. So here's our prototype schedule, and I will use that word a lot in this class because a lot of this is an experiment, right? So we went through, last week was lecture 2. We went over overview of entrepreneurship and the Stanford biodesign process, so hopefully you got a feel for that. What we're going to do today is really focus on the need statement. Why is the need statement so important? How do you determine a need statement? How do you determine if it's a good need statement? How do you determine if it's a better need statement than another need statement? And this will all become much clearer. Lecture number 4, we'll be diving deeper into the fundamentals of the need statement. So this includes something called scoping, which is, at what level do you want to scope a problem at, a higher or broader level or a lower level? We'll then be talking about the market size. So how do you assess a need now? Like, how large is the market? Are you saving costs out of the system, etc.? And also the patient impact. So how severe is the disease state that you're solving? Is it just a scratch, or is it something that's life-threatening? And how do you make that assessment in terms of how important that need is compared with other needs? On the 5th lecture, we're actually going to have an individual presentation of 2 validated needs. So what I'll ask everyone to do is, and you'll have time, but to share with the class 2 needs that are kind of fleshed out and based on some type of clinical area. Ahead, I'm not doing this lecture today, but after you do the need statement, you're going to go into need screening. So you're going to look at disease state fundamentals. You're going to look at what treatments are already out there. You're going to look at who the players are, what's the flow of care around a clinical situation, and then how do you evaluate the market opportunity. And all that comes into how you filter the need and how you rate the need. This is going to be a scrolling lecture. Okay, so really the need statement, well, I'll do my best. The need statement is really the nuts and the bolts. It's really the meat and the potatoes of the whole biodesign process. So I can't emphasize enough how important that understanding what the observation is that you're seeing, what's happening, occurring in front of you, what type of real problem it is, and figuring out what that problem is, and then tying in that problem with an outcome that's actually quantifiable. So if you just have a problem, like I'd ask in the assignment to list both observations and problems, that's not a need statement. You actually need to connect what a problem is with an outcome to get the need statement. So observation can really occur anywhere. I think I heard one of the gentlemen over here talking about how you were at a hospital procedure yourself or something like that. It can really occur at any time. It doesn't have to be you're on a special rotation for observing things, right? It could even happen if you visit your grandma at the nursing home or whatever. It could be, it doesn't matter where it happens. For this, these pictures are more focused on surgery, but I think it's important to emphasize that it could come from it could be a service-based type of innovation. It could be something more like optimizing flow of care. There could be a number of things that don't just involve a typical device. It could be another type of problem that you're solving. So biodesign innovation is really about understanding the need, and that's really about observing patient care. And I'm not saying physician care, I'm saying overall patient care. So what's happening all around the patient, right? What happens when they're seeking care, when they're actually having the care that's administered, and also when they're recovering from care. So there's this whole process that's kind of centered around the patient, but at the same time there's a number of key stakeholders that are around there that are really important to understand how they're being influenced from this care. And asking questions. So it's really important to be curious and asking what I would say almost simple even stupid types of questions, but why is the patient here in the first place? What's really going on? What's the real reason there's this line, waiting into the operating room? And again, what do the stakeholders need? So you have to understand who is actually kind of in this sphere around the problem. It's not just one-dimensional. And also competing outcomes. So just because you may be able to see your doctor quicker, a lot of times, doctors are incentivized by making more money than they are, helping certain patients. That's just the reality of the situation. So there could be competing outcomes, and having an understanding of that is really important in terms of defining the need statement appropriately. And if there's any questions, just please jump out, okay? So where we stopped with the assignment was at the problem. So this is how you go from problem to outcome, okay? The need statement addresses a specific problem. Solutions for the problem will be evaluated by some type of change in the outcome. And the outcomes need to be measured objectively. That's extremely important. So there's going to be a lot of challenges as to what you're measuring and what that change should be. And is it appropriate? Is it appropriate change? Is it high enough? Is it low enough? So an example would be someone that has issue with blood pressure, and so just making sure that they're within a certain range of a measurement of blood pressure, right? But you don't want the range to be too small or too large, and you don't have the therapeutic window correctly dialed in. So really keen in on the numbers of the specific outcome is important. Okay, so these may be some ones that you've heard before or seen or thought about, things that you could improve in the clinic or the hospital type of setting. You probably have observed it just being around. So here's a desired outcome, okay? Think about it as some student or entrepreneur that says, I want to improve clinical efficacy. Well, what does that mean, right? What does efficacy mean? So a way you can actually measure it and quantify it is, okay, let's actually look at the success rates in the clinical trials themselves. So if you're looking at some type of cardiovascular, a better way to prevent atrial fibrillation, then you would say, rather than say to have better clinical efficacy, you would say, to have a certain success rate in a clinical trial, and that's tied in. Another one is increasing patient safety. So patient safety, that sounds like a really important term, but what does that actually mean? So you can measure patient safety by rate of adverse events, in this case, and measured in a clinical trial. Another very important criteria in healthcare, because as I mentioned, you can't just be better, you have to be cheaper in today's medical solutions. For reduced cost, you want to think about the total cost of the procedure. And it may not be just for the device that you're selling, right? It could be for the actual entire procedure, dealing with all the stakeholders. So maybe you can save a lot of money for the surgeon, but your device is a little bit more expensive or whatever it is. But all that needs to be factored into the need statement. Here's another one, improving productivity. Obviously, if you can improve productivity, many clinicians, surgeons enjoy that because they can do more cases and serve more patients. And you can measure that in terms of time and resources required to perform procedures. And I would say actually it's probably important to define the resources a little bit better. That needs to be clear. Then ease of use. So maybe some surgeon has a tool that they're using for laparoscopic procedure, and it's very challenging to use, right? And so if you see that, you're like, this would be something that would be a great way to help this surgeon. But it's important to think about the solution would involve complex workarounds and or simplification of the workflow. So maybe there's another component of the overall workflow that can be reduced in addition to this improving physician ease of use. I would also say that ease of use is a very difficult thing to work with. Like you can think, oh, I can really help this surgeon with this tool. This is one of the most common ones. But end of the day, how you quantify that, you know, it just depend on the individual surgeon. Another last topic here was the improved patient convenience. So you need to look at, you know, convenience is another tricky one. Actually look at the frequency as opposed to the convenience. So maybe you can reduce the number of visits that the different patients or nurses or whoever are having. And also change in treatment venue. So this one is important because if you can bring the procedure from a hospital to a clinic, and better yet to the home, right? Those are massive shifts that are affecting patient convenience, but specifically actually could affect a number of things in terms of reducing cost and a number of items on the list. So I just want to point that out, that as we know with telemedicine and all these types of home care technologies, that's becoming more and more prevalent and will continue to be. All right, so a little bit more on the needs statement here. What you're going to find is that, and maybe you've already found it in some of your problems, there's typically like a lot of problems when you're looking at just one area, right? You can have lots of observations, lots of problems, but what you need to find is, and figure out, is you need to isolate the need. You need to isolate the one that's most important. And you can do that because once you've found that one kind of linchpin, then you want to pursue it with all your might, because you know there's enough strength behind it based on the need statement that you can drive it. If you can drive it to a desired outcome, you can have a successful result potentially. And that's because you've looked at it from different lenses of market opportunity, of pathophysiology, etc. The need statement is captured in one sentence, and that's because it's really nice to have a very concise, to the point need statement. And most need statements start out with a better way. So I don't know if you saw that in the textbook, but I purposefully didn't say it has to start out in a certain way because we were focusing on problems. But now that we move to need statements, you want to start things off by saying a better way. And why that's important is you're not saying a better product to do this, right? You're not saying a better service to do that. You're actually keeping it as open-ended as possible. And that's the whole point. You focus on the goal with the outcome, not just a specific treatment solution. Everything makes sense so far? So this is a good, simple illustration just to drive home the point of what we're talking about, that it's all about finding the right problem with the right outcome and the outcome measure, and leads to, guess what that leads to? You got it. The need statement. And here's another kind of, could seem like a somewhat silly cartoon, but it's really not. So, there we go. So what we're going to learn as we go through things here is you're going to go from a prototype need statement, then you're going to go down, you're going to have to do more kind of research, you're going to have to change, a lot of it is changing the scope. So maybe you realize that you're way too broad, you're trying to save all humanity, okay, with whatever, it doesn't matter. But that's way too broad. So you know, you're gonna have to rescope it and bring it down to like, I'm gonna focus on this diabetic population or this diabetic retinopathy population or whatever it is. And it's not trivial, because as soon as you change the wording and the scope, you're completely changing a new need statement, right? You're making it completely different. And also if you change the outcome, it's becoming completely different. So it's literally an art to learn, and I'll do my best to help you all learn it in this short time. Then once we have the need statement, pretty well defined, and this is what I'm going to have you guys present in 2 weeks or so, is a pretty well defined need statement. Then we're going to move into the need specification, and I'll get into that later. But you can think of it as a specific set of rules that's based off of the need statement. So The need specification, it creates the space for the solution to exist. But you already define it before you brainstorm and start your solution, identify your solution, because you want to make sure you're inventing in a space that's defined by the need statement, because you can easily drift away from it very quickly. And that's also we'll probably spend about 2 weeks of the course just on the need spec. Okay, a couple other scoping problems I mentioned. Could this problem exist within a larger patient population? So this is scoping up, right? Could this problem exist within a subset of the patient population? So patient segmentation of the market and knowing who your exact customer is, if you will, that's a key piece of the need statement, because if you're dealing with an older population versus a younger population, or men versus women in the simplest sense, you're going to have to take that into consideration. Also, can you be more specific in addressing the need? So maybe you're not zoned in enough on what the actual need is and the outcome. And also, could you be more broad in addressing the need? So pretty much the same as what it says above. Okay, so here's just a quick example of scoped need statement. So I will start with the pyramid and the piece on the top, and I'll let one of the medical people in the room describe what a sternotomy is. Anyone?
So sternotomy is when you open up the chest essentially for like open heart surgery.
Yep, perfect. So it's like this kind of a, right?
Yeah, midline incision.
Cut right down the
right
middle.
Here in the middle of your chest. Exactly.
Okay. All right. That's pretty invasive. So this is a way to close a sternotomy quickly and securely. Okay. So they have the problem, a way to close a sternotomy quickly and securely. What do you think about quickly and securely? Does that sound very precise or specific outcome? No, not yet. But quickly they could measure that more by time. Securely they could measure that maybe by force. I'm thinking as an engineer, I don't know. Anyways, the point of this exercise though is to show, it's not so much to harp on the need statement, it's to show, okay, let's go a little broader, right? Let's go from just the sternotomy, which is this incision. What's the point of the sternotomy in the first place? So it says a way to perform a CABG, which is a coronary artery bypass graft, without the sternotomy. So then all of a sudden you can do this procedure without opening the chest, right? That sounds way better. And then you go even broader and you say a way to revascularize. That's the issue. The heart muscle, the heart tissue is not receiving the vascularization it needs, and then the quantifiable outcome is without access morbidity. So you can see how, these are you would be starting 3 completely different companies, right, off of these 3 need statements. And a lot of times what happens is you'll come in with one like at the top, and you'll realize, okay, you're just focusing on this more narrow chest kind of procedure that's really terrible in terms of a wound healing standpoint. But hey, if you take a step back and you rescope it, you could have a much bigger problem that you're solving. So this is a real type of issue that you will encounter when you start going through these exercises. Any questions on that? Okay, and then for this, just to get you all engaged here, I'm going to ask one of you to read kind of each section, like the need identification and then the box next to it, and then I'll have another person do it. So who would like to be the first to read more about the need identification? Yes, please.
Okay. Spend time with the customer, observe their daily routine, become an expert in their problems, observe the problems in different settings.
Okay. Who's next? Yeah.
Need validation. Confirm the need assessment. Interview key opinion leaders. Review the literature. Ask the following question. Why is this a problem? Will someone pay for a solution to this need?
So I'll just highlight this because when you all start forming your prototype need statements, this is when you're going to want to take more due diligence and kind of action to start talking to some of the clinicians at UCSD, people in your network, people that we can try to connect you with, looking into the literature. So it's kind of your own like deeper dive diligence you do based on your observations and problems. Next one.
Prioritize needs according to risk, technical, clinical, regulatory, reimbursement, opportunity, market size, competition, IP, capabilities of team, etc.
So this will be, hopefully you can see it, this will be when you're going more narrow and narrow into the need statement validation. And so this is some of the criteria I mentioned earlier, right? How you actually will rank the need statements, because you'll have different important aspects to showing what's the most valid need statement. And I'm not getting into it today, but there's an actual matrix that you will use with your need statements with different categories of market size and patient severity and a number of things in here that will allow you to actually do a quantified rank of your different needs. And that's a really good way to do it, because then you're not as biased towards, I mean, in one sense it's good to be excited about a certain need in a certain area, but at the same time you don't want to get your excitement carried away. You want to focus almost like what's the most analytic approach to moving forward. So we'll get into that later, but this will be very important down the line. And then someone else, please read the last one. Yeah.
Sure. How will you know that you have solved the customer need? Ask them for criteria to determine what results they want, not how they want to achieve the results.
It will result in a market opportunity. It will result in lots of potential success, because you spent the time up front doing it, right? Rather than on the back end, once you've invented the whatever it is, the widget, then you are kind of wishing you did it more on the front end. So this need specification, that will be the goal for the end of this quarter. So I want your team to have 2 good needs and 2 good needs spec off those needs, okay? And what's really fantastic about that is that you can then take that immediately when you start the next quarter. You'll be all ready to go for your brainstorming. You'll have the whole kind of solution space of where you can invent in and work in. And you're actually working on a really well-vetted problem. Let's see where we're at. Yeah, just a couple more slides and then we'll take a break. So this is now getting into more of the kind of more advanced clinical need assessment. So, and this follows exactly the biodesign textbook. So I'm going to ask that you read these sections, which is starting in chapter 2, I believe, and on the ebiodesign.org website. So these are your 4 pillars of assessment for clinical need evaluation. So you have your disease state fundamentals, which basically means like what is going on in the physiology of the body, or if it's flow of care, what is really going on in the different relationships and the processing habits. Then you have and by the way, the disease state fundamentals, especially if it's a medical device, is absolutely critical. Oftentimes the disease state fundamentals that are the most challenging to solve, those have the largest return, but it's also going to take the most money to solve it, so if that makes sense. So the best opportunity is if you can come to some new insight. This is what we always teach, is you determine some new insight in the body for treating some type of procedure or some type of disease mechanism. Now that's really rare that happens, but it can happen, and it just means that maybe now you can compete in a space where a whole bunch of billion-dollar drugs and products have failed, and you figured something out. And one of my companies, Oculi, that sold to Allergan, which you'll hear me talk about, we were fortunate with that experience because In the early stages, we spent a lot of time getting to know the clinical problem and really digging in. And we had more time, right? But it's just that I'm just trying to emphasize the importance of really understanding the human body for these. Market evaluation, so we'll get deep into that. Is, you know, how large is the market? Just so you know, most venture capitalists, I mean, you know, won't even touch a company if you're not addressing at least $1 billion market cap, at least in the United States. So it doesn't mean you need to shoot for $1 billion market potential, but oftentimes, you know, if it's going to make $10 million and that's the best you can do, most investors wouldn't touch that at all. And I'll help you learn like what thresholds are important to hit if you're looking for an investment or what types of rounds. But this will actually come into play a little bit, and also the cost effectiveness, right? Are you saving money out of the system? Are you saving costs out of the system? Another thing that's important even at this stage is existing treatments. So you need to know, like, you don't necessarily need to do all these patent searches when you're looking into this, but you at least need to know like who the players are, basic players are, and is there any white space in the market for you to perform. If you know there's 100 different companies in like one of my dental implant company, there's like 400 dental implant companies, so it's like knowing that is extremely important, because then you know what type of competition you're headed up against, and you need to weigh in. Okay, well, lots of competition, but maybe the market is really big, and maybe we figured out something that's really new, and then all of a sudden that sounds pretty good. You have to weigh all these things in the balance. And then stakeholder evaluation. It's really another thing is insights can come up when you're talking to the different players that are around a problem. And one example is in from basically the operating room to like a femtosecond laser, like in the clinic. So they're able to move the entire, like shift the entire process. And so it's made it that much cheaper and that much more affordable for patients. So without understanding that some doctors wanted to perform it in the clinic, if you shift it to a new population of clinicians, so to speak, that are hungry to adopt a new technology, that can drive an entire new market. I'm not going to go over that right now. And then last thing for the break, it's really important to understand that needs have different flavors. And these are them. There's the blue sky, which is typically we like to describe them as like science projects. So it's almost like very, very, very early stage. I would say more of the pharma development, my understanding at least, and more biotech would kind of be on the more blue sky, because the timelines tend to be longer. Then you have incremental, which that is oftentimes almost like having just some modification to an already existing product. So it can be, or it doesn't have to be a product, it can be to a service where it's just done a little bit differently. But you typically don't see a huge change in behavior. And there's nothing wrong with these, with incremental. I have to say, I've had like an incremental company before, and the idea though is that make sure that there's enough of a carrot at the end of the road with that company, that you validated that it's maybe you can sell enough of them, and then there'll be some good revenue that comes in. But there's nothing wrong with incremental. Just know you're in incremental. Know you're not in blue sky, and then you combine the two, and it's mixed. And a lot of the projects probably that you'll work on, I assume are going to be kind of a hybrid between the two. So, yeah.
So with incremental, if you let's say make just one addition, couldn't you keep it going by making the whole point of the company is to keep it moving on that technology? Or would that make it blue sky?
That's a good question. No, I think how I'm looking at it out of the needs statement, that just the isolated needs statement itself would be incremental. Like you could do a blue sky project and you could make the product, but then it could be an incremental business model. So then you're just improving in a very small fashion moving forward. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Or I think we have a 10-minute break coming up. Yep. And thanks for being patient too with me to talk through the different problems that you identified. And if you want a little time to kind of modify them, I'm sure based on these lectures there's going to be some modifications. That's also fine. So yeah, let's look at, let's say 15 minutes for now. So pair up. Each of you can present, I would say your top kind of problem that you're the most interested in the ones you listed. And then you can kind of critique each other's need statements and kind of work together. And then hopefully, and maybe it'll be more like 20 minutes or 25 minutes, but you'll have more of kind of like a better developed need statement. And the idea is that it doesn't need to be perfect. I mean, you guys are just doing this right now. It's the whole idea that you're kind of grasping the concept of like, okay, well, it would be good if we knew a little bit more about what this part was or this measurement was, or does that make sense? So you're just looking at the need statement itself with the problem tied to the outcome. And if you want to reword them, I would typically start with a better way. That's what I use because it just leaves it very open-ended. So yeah, so go ahead and pair up and get started on that. I'll check in about 20 minutes. Okay. This prototype, and then we'll have a class discussion about kind of how they could be done a little differently or enhanced here, or what we like about this one, and then that way it's it's more of a class discussion and a learning exercise. So in the next 10 minutes or so, if you can write down your own kind of need statement that you've also been going over with your buddy, and then say in another 10 minutes, please write it up on the board. Say by say in by 7:40, so it's in 15 minutes or so. If your two team members can pick the best one to write up on the board, so there'll be 5 need statements total. Thanks.
Basically, it was just dealing with saxophone. So,
that's not
kind of making a better joke.
Well, you should say that,
Except like
and
one
then
strand.
that they weren't.
And stuff like getting but also, I think while they have changed something to avoid like drilling out everything just to get the one part, so you can get another time go a little bit more. It still ends up with like
So it's very.
But the other thing is that it also
I'm actually, that's not the
I guess my main problem is not for that specific case, it's just, he has a long,
Thirdly, it's better
after the surgery, he didn't know about it, he went for a follow-up like 4 days later, and they just get this thing out, which is like,
just see if they
so I don't know where that would be going, but that was kind of interesting, he had no idea. Well, when he went in the follow-up, they just took it out as if it was like basically just pad, it was about like fluid draining,
is it possible that someone ties in
to prevent clot.
No, I don't agree.
Is it?
He was fine, he was just kind of, he had to.
So you have your.
So I think
Yeah, I don't know, just think like a lot of packs like help them.
It's probably to help with like, so it keeps draining.
Yeah.
That's something to hemostasis, it will not, it goes off, something the same.
And then you have to just do what's happening.
that vein, next time they're poking,
Antibiotics afterwards.
I know that.
Is there any? The thing is, I saw
Yeah,
want to push out these rapid diagnosis because we want results right away.
That's
Because just
So it's just trying to like,
if you don't get back to the person, they're not gonna come back. So get your results.
and the next one is patient.
And I feel like that might also be an issue here where, you know,
branch out like this.
What do we go?
That's because lack
Have a
of
few people, especially when you have residents in this.
Yeah.
That's
There's
right.
so many variables.
So
Noticing
they
upstairs.
were.
Once there's like a
There,
layer.
And I do want to
Forever.
I like your CSS.
Time, because they were.
Let's go back to your list. Let's choose one.
Like, so it's similar to.
CSF.
But this is very specific to.
So like, it just happens to the patient in hospitals or like both?
Catheter,
So
more
like,
just to differentiate, it's just more of a hospital process.
Keep counting the patient to grow, to like regularly.
So
I think
for
that's.
But what if they're not? What if they're sitting, like, so during the day, what if they're just sitting watching
So like, I think like right now, I think for those patients, nurses will just come like as some sort of in the day to go
a better way to assess.
and then I guess it goes on about
So problem is,
but I guess it's not about patients.
I like it. I like it.
you made the patient.
Yes, being more responsible, being aware that that is a responsibility and to.
a lot of ways to get like
The other one is
communication.
Just wrap it up on that.
yeah, so the problem,
But your best
where
is
they are,
Just getting
if you want
what
them,
sensors onto the.
you basically have to be being addicted. So it's like an
What's wrong?
Basically the process being taking pressure. I imagine it's not too much of a problem. Because any of that stuff's happening.
Alright, so you should be writing down those need statements on the papers at least, and then put them up in the next 5 minutes, please, on the board.
So that'd be good.
That'd be good.
Yes,
Yeah.
that'd be good.
Okay. So it's when they
outside of that.
injection, there's no procedure, no technique, no like tool that can guide the advice or the doctor.
Like I said, I think you change it.
It's based on experience. So the more you do the better you get. So very routine, and if you don't get it right, that's
Yeah.
So maybe you can come up with a better way to
And these are, so, when you have, you have an event.
Yeah.
No, so when you have an idea, you have like a. That's
Oh, you use that.
so that you can figure out.
Patient discomfort.
Yeah, what is it? Yeah, patient discomfort and,
So this is a similar.
Position anxiety. Does hit on both of them.
Similar to people who want to get a. So
discomfort.
community hospital clinics in time and.
Regular?
Yeah,
Instead of trying to find an injection site every time, you might want to see if there's a way to keep something separate.
So what is the main problem?
because they trust
Main
it.
problem right now is the one that's for the patient, they don't like it.
Is it difficult to do? It's like a resident. It's like
It's hard to do, so.
Yeah, so that's.
The
And
problem
increasing
is,
success rate.
yeah, the problem is
Yeah.
having to
Patient, increasing
Take
compliance, my
blood.
brother wants to use it.
several times a day.
By the end of it.
So that
Maybe not even have it patient initiated.
So-
It's a doctor's initiated.
Increasing compliance?
I was kind of, but as in like special insurance,
When the doctor doesn't
it's
get
being done
feedback,
by walking.
what happens, I feel like it doesn't work well, the nurse you call
So it's hard to do, it takes
It's
long,
not as easy to do
and
that.
the success rate is.
but a lot of them seem to like time
And they're not accurate on the
a lot of the things on false
specific
Well,
data.
Yeah, that's one thing with mine.
It's very uncomfortable.
Well, there's one thing about you.
Oh, nice, you writing all caps too?
When I write on the board, when I scribble on this thing,
Dude, I can't stop. I wish, yeah. See, it's nice. I wish I had not found it from person that would take that so much faster. But I just like automatically have to go all caps now.
it's better than it's more legible.
Well, sometimes I'll write that small too, though, and I'll piss people off. So I'll write all caps.
And decreasing, what's the number to say decreasing the number, like the time of the hire?
And
Yeah, usually you want the doctor to get back to you.
minimize, well, I guess like minimizing
Yeah.
failed attempts, maybe minimizing overall procedure time.
Yeah, decreasing. We'll tweak it, that kind of gets the idea.
Yeah. That has the,
Like,
it has the
So what do
method,
you want to do from
it
there?
has time measurement.
Yeah,
Yeah, the doctor.
no, I asked this one.
You have to beat the,
I like
well, I don't know if you have to beat it.
Understand.
I might have to beat the,
You want to be brainstorm anything you know.
it's the current.
The solution is also
Yeah, that's what I think.
Probably just the.
Infection,
No, no, no.
respiratory disruptions. So,
Have to do with materials or rejection of the method.
it's based, some people think it has to do
If you
with
met the school passing.
the type of the plant. A lot of people think it's due to
There's
the
no
method.
any
So they're kind of related, there's infection, there's
Unless
something
it's
called capsular contracture. So capsular contracture is where the cells implant.
They haven't, this is one of the.
That's what's always have any form of
So I
where
didn't
it actually
actually
real
research.
contracture, starts to shoot them to the contract. It doesn't happen in all patients. It's painful,
Okay. It's.
it's a form of the implant, so now your nervous system has now very
Okay, I
taught
was
on
wondering
it.
how to do something to do that, get some problems or
So I think back in the
That's the thing, I think they injected on
keep
me.
steps ahead of time
That's
for
why.
scar problems. Because
So,
hyperinflammable
I feel
scar
like,
tissue.
you know how
Like if I get
there's
that's usually
like 7x
99% chance it's just gonna stay.
where
Like I spread it, I scraped my knee,
like,
felt it, like,
You're
you're
something.
so like
the other day, and that's probably just gonna be straight.
Do you get hypertrophic?
It's fine.
Or you're saying
So they had like, you mean like large, like
Oh, I see your point.
It used to be a large, but yeah, that was just like a
No,
small.
it's
So I was because I actually had to go back to the way more exposed gas. When you took them off, you didn't really ask any questions. It's kind of, and I kind of.
Right, I see only one need up there.
You just burn them off and then the scar tissue gets super bad.
Okay,
So I would have.
doesn't have to be perfect,
If I
prototype.
would have known that, it would have been really hard to build that scar tissue.
Expected expenditure.
That's a good point, yeah. How can you test preoperatively even have problems you've done?
And then that has the follow-up angle. Is there any, problem sorry to hit on the service scar tissue accumulation over that. You said the catheter accumulation, what was it? Or the implant?
Capsule, all
Yeah.
forms, it's like scar tissues.
And that capsule scar tissue, is there ever any problem where that capsule transfers?
So I guess
Because,
we don't have too many.
No, it doesn't treat cancer very well. I see we're saying someone with vision. There's a very, very rare cancer called transplastic or cell lymphoma associated with breast implants. Basically you get like a seroma, which is like a fluid buildup, not blood, it's like So you were saying it is,
Achieve.
Kind of like the content.
Yeah, better to start
So-
simple goals too.
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah,
Because
yeah.
it'll be
It's,
easier
you get a
to
aroma that,
use.
the fluid buildup, if you have the fluid buildup after
How
like
does
6
it
months,
measure?
then it really increases your suspicion for anaplastic or cell lymphoma. Associated with something like really low.
Yeah.
It's the only cancer center they go measure the white cancers.
I would
Do
focus
we
on
have
that, that would just
specific
be like
disease
my thought line here. Like,
No, I think it's just a needs, it's just to start
Yeah.
figuring it out.
I think I'll
Is that the main problem with the plastic implants? Is like
When
when
we
you
should talk about when you find ways to.
I
The
worked
breast
there
cancer,
6 months.
it's infection and like capsular
I think
common reason for reoperation of the
Yeah.
They did a lot of studies on it, so they're trying to figure out what is the problem. So they think that it might be due to bacteria, in which case they actually like hitting
All right, time to head up to the board.
the disinfectant. And even that pain
Make
is
sure you know
to really minimize
Yeah.
the risk of any bacteria in there and shrink
It's okay if you don't have anything, but it's just clean up your thoughts. I'm not gonna call anyone out on it.
Sterilize it quicker. That kind of goes along with sterilizing everything. Pasteurization, it's just like when you do all this, all the good bacteria is killed as well.
Well, for implants, that makes sense. I understand like how you have office, things like that, but
Find a spot,
when you're implanting it into a
different
closed
spot
space,
that's not that.
you need it to be sterile, otherwise you are going to get infection. Anytime you have bacteria in a closed space,
I don't know what it is.
other than a place to go,
Not,
Gotcha.
that's a good
not
infection.
in drawing.
Is that a problem? Better
Like,
cutting
if you're
methods.
doing the IV line, I think, so for IV,
Yeah, it's a very broad one,
for
but
IV bag,
really
from my
focus on
lab experience, like he had IV bag on a specific hole, only to the whole body.
Yeah.
So I would take it out. So
Or
like
you just replace the bag, right?
yeah, so like with this, like took it out.
Yeah, because you have to replace your.
anesthesia.
That's-
Oh, I do.
Thanks. Yeah.
Oh, we only have one marker, huh?
Medicinal forensics and general, there's always a backlog. It's like the actual, it's the actual assay, work.
I'm gonna squeeze right behind you.
Assessment,
You're good.
It's a long
See what the literature stage you.
Oh, where is it? Oh, yeah, over here, yeah. It's in AR, yeah. That's why I should totally different anymore. Yeah.
You can't sit here anymore. Make room. So how was that? Fast. Yeah. It was supposed to be fast. All right, I'll go ahead and get started. We'll just read down the line. My hope is that we can just collectively learn how to craft them a little bit better as we go through, because that's what we're going to be doing moving forward in a lot of our assignments. This need statement is a better way to assess cerebrospinal fluid, CSF, contents while minimizing patient discomfort, increasing compliance, and decreasing procedure time. Good. So what do you think looks good with this need statement? I like that it's pretty specific about what they're assessing, the contents of the fluid. It's something that's measurable. I like that they're going after multiple problems, or at least starting to go after multiple problems. And oftentimes you'll find when there's a big problem, this could have multiple outcomes, right? So while minimizing patient discomfort, you could split that into one need statement itself. Increasing compliance, another one, and decreasing procedure time, another one. Or you could keep them together if you find out that each one of these is critical. Remember that whole isolating the need statement as to what's the most critical variable? So maybe all of them are equally critical, or maybe it's just minimizing patient discomfort. So I think this is a good example of a need statement that is covering a lot of ground, but oftentimes it's okay in the beginning. It shows you're aware of what some of the problems are. What I think could be slightly improved is I think I'd like to see more quantifiable outcome on it. And again, that's how would you know that just coming, right now? How would you know how to measure patient discomfort or whatever? But so where I would dig in more for those of you who are part of this need statement, I think it's worth looking into more, and I would try to determine which of these kind of three variables, patient discomfort, client compliance, or procedure time, is like the most critical one, and also how would you measure that? I guess procedure time, that's more clear cut, but you're going to get so specific in your need statements where it could say decreasing procedure time by 5 minutes, right? So if it's over 5 minutes, then it doesn't work. That's the level you'll get to when you're down to your needs specification. But overall, I think this is a good example of a need statement to start out with. Okay? A better way to test for colon cancer in a cost-effective way. So this is good. This is also a very broad problem to solve, and it's also broadly defined in a cost-effective way. So there's different ways you could go in and take out the different pieces of how you can save money out of the healthcare system. And you could even scope it down if there's a specific patient population or something like that you're trying to focus in on, right? You could determine that, and then maybe out of that patient population, then there's more of a more accurate way to reduce the cost, or assert some type of factor that you could hone in on. The only thing, I think it's okay. We have to be careful of including solutions in need statements because they're often self-limiting. In this case, a better way to test for colon cancer, I actually take that back. I don't think it's putting in some type of solution, but you could say like a better way to, if you wanted to go broader, you can even go up to prevent colon cancer. That's an extreme example, but you see how it's very nuanced where maybe I don't want to do a test. I want to actually do a prevention or diagnose faster or whatever it is. So, but that would be changing the need statement. So, good. This one's a better method. Actually, does someone want to read it? Maybe you, sir?
Sure. A better method to reduce time for the provider to advise patient on symptom management.
Okay. So, good. So right away you're going into reducing time for the provider to advise patient on symptom management. So this again is nice and broad. You could probably hone in more on what type of provider, and also on the symptom management. But again, this is a very broad goal need statement that you could scope into probably 10 different possibilities. Just whoever the team that wrote this one, could you provide a little bit more information on that? That would help me understand.
Yeah, we wrote this one.
Yes.
Well, we were actually, this was referring to actually post-surgical patients.
Okay.
So for example, if the patient has certain symptoms and is reporting that to the doctor, just a way to reduce time to get feedback back from the provider on how to manage that. There's situations where I've seen it takes weeks to get back, and that symptom is still an issue, but just a more fluid communication.
Sure.
platform. Yeah.
Okay. So just kind of, it sounds like overall, but there may be a special branch you want to focus in on
Yeah.
at some
There'll
point.
be a special
Right, a
specific
niche.
disease,
Yeah.
or condition.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
maybe like the most common post-surgical complications or symptoms, trying to make that an efficient way, because patients frequently complain about X pain or difficulty urinating or something. So is it a way to just focus on those, or just everything in general?
Yeah, so it would be focusing on a certain specific, most occurring
The most
condition.
common. Okay.
Most common, yeah.
Awesome.
We just want to keep it broad,
Yep.
really broad in terms of any symptom.
Sure.
And then,
Sure. Great. All right. Would someone else like to read this?
Better way to inform patients in real time of costs associated with procedures to reduce unexpected expenses.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, so, should we explain, or do you guys wanna?
Yeah, let me analyze it a little bit more, and then I want to hear more about it. So, a better way to inform patients in real time of costs associated with procedures to reduce unexpected expenses. Yeah, there's a lot in that. So, I think you could tease out more about, obviously, about what the procedures are, clearly, and then what would be, are you just measuring by expense, or is it time in the hospital, or is that factored into? What would be the other areas that you would want to look into more? Do you want to comment a little bit more on the observation or the need, or?
I can a little bit.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine he had a baby recently, and so went to the hospital. The nurse comes in and is like, "Oh, do you want us to take the baby, put it in the nursery for a couple hours?" And of course, what he didn't realize was, he's tired, his wife's tired, and they're like, "Sure, yeah, take this baby off our hands." They don't realize that they're actually paying for that out of pocket. So whenever they do get the bill in the mail, which comes in, several weeks later, after everything's said and done, going through the bill, they realize, oh, whoa, what's this cost here? This wasn't covered by the insurance. So there has to be a better way for you when you're in a hospital to be able to know. And of course, if it's something that's emergency, yes, do whatever. But if it's something that's more, you're making the decision, you should be able to know right then and there, one, how much your insurance is going to cover, and is it something that's going to be coming out of your pocket? So,
Sure.
I don't know.
So this is a really good example of stakeholder analysis too, right? Because you have the insurance companies, you have the different doctors' offices, different patients, different health insurances.
Sure.
So all these different reimbursement codes, all these moving parts. But yeah, that's definitely, it's just an interesting one, I think, to explore more, especially with the cost savings.
Yeah.
Not to say the other ones up here aren't, but that's an interesting need.
I was reading The Digital Doctor, and he was talking about increasing cost transparency and how it's a huge problem with, he goes into a lot about the current electronic medical records and the problems associated with that, the pros and the cons, but increased cost transparency is a huge issue for patients to know what am I paying for, and what's kind of, what's worth it, what's not.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
So the other question is, who knows what sometimes the patient, the doctor, and the nurse doesn't know.
Yeah, I doubt that nurse.
Yeah.
That nurse is
Yeah,
probably
right
just trying to
now,
help you out.
Someone else
Yeah.
did it a week later.
Yeah, some algorithm. But see, that's a solution. So I critique myself. Who knows what it could be. So all right, who would like to read the last one?
A better way to draw patients' blood during extended hospital stays without having to find the vein multiple times.
So a better way to draw patients' blood during extended hospital stays without having to find.
Sorry, I'm missing words here.
Oh, yeah.
Find the vein multiple times.
Find the vein multiple times. Okay. Yeah.
I'm the patient.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think this is anything with taking blood, and whatnot. I think I've experienced that problem before, actually, like just all the needle pricks that you don't want.
Yeah, they have to like poke like different holes in
Right.
the arms. Yeah, so like maybe without having to find the vein multiple times.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. So it would be, I'm just trying to think of what multiple times. I guess I'm kind of thinking of like how you would measure that, because like, is it 2 times? Is it like, what would be, and it's not just, obviously you don't want to have the patient to have it drawn ever again, right? Only once.
Yeah.
But I guess part of the need statement here would be what would actually change the care or the interest of the hospital, not just the patient, because every patient's not going to want it, multiple pricks, you know. But so to me, that's kind of if you can find what that would look like, I think that would be kind of interesting. If there's, you know, now I'm getting more specific, but this is how the need statements work. So is there a paper that shows anything with, you know, if you draw it only, I'm just making this up, right? But if you only draw it 2 times, then not only is it better for the patient, but it saves money or something like that. And that's another thing you could focus on, better way to, so this is basically patient pain. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. So what if they had multiple, I'm doing syntax right now in the need statement. So it doesn't mention though pain specifically, right? So, and pain's one of the trickier ones, because how do you measure pain? It's not very straightforward at all. But again, that's probably why it may be better to have the, you know, multiple times in there. I'm not sure, but these are just things you could tease out. Any other comments on the statement?
I guess you mentioned something about solutions.
Yes.
So I guess when I read without having to find the vein multiple times,
Yes.
I thought that was like hinting towards the solution. Or
Yeah.
is that, I just thought a better way to draw up the patient's blood. Reducing pain.
Yeah, you know, it's not like a flat out like glaring solution, but it is approaching that. Do you see that? Because it implies that you're having to, it may seem silly, but it implies you're having to draw a patient's blood using a vein multiple times, right? Maybe there's some other ways, well, that you would, you know, draw the blood or something like that. So it would, you see how that would open up though the solution space? You would have more solution space if, as you were saying, you just took off this without having to find multiple times. But with that said, you still need some type of specific outcome tied into that need statement.
I had a similar thought when I first read it, which was, so the reason we're drawing blood is to measure some lab value, whether that's your hemoglobin or your sodium concentration, whatever it is. So kind of going back to what you're saying, instead of drawing a patient's blood, maybe what we're trying to do is assess X lab value.
Mm.
Maybe you don't even need to draw a patient's blood.
Sure. So I think this gives you a flavor for, or sorry, did someone else have a comment? Or yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so in terms of language, maybe without and multiple can translate into reducing. So without would be totally eliminating that, but what we want to do is reduce the number of times of drawing blood. So then that will be saying the need but not hinting at the solution.
Yep. Sure. So, and these things are very finicky, right? Just one little tweak and you're 30 miles away. So I think hopefully you got a little feel for need statements and how they work and need statement development. That was the goal of the class today. I'm trying to think of the best way to move forward. I know we get together on Thursday to go over more of the need statement fundamentals and kind of like vetting them out, like based on the pathophysiology, based on the market, based on the stakeholders, and based on the treatment options. So I guess I have 2 kind of assignments, very quick assignments for Thursday. If you don't mind just writing them down or so the first is I'd like you to spend maybe a half an hour to an hour reading 2.1 and 2.2. These are the disease state fundamentals and I believe the treatment options. And then I think it would be good if you can spend another half hour or so just looking at ebiodesign.org, and you know, a lot of this is for your own edification and learning, but there's such rich stuff on there. Again, with 2.1 and 2.2. But most importantly, I ask you to do the reading before you do the videos, just to make sure that the core is there. And then, so we're clear on that, just 2.1 and 2.2, hopefully half an hour to an hour. And then if you want to do ebiodesign.org for another half an hour or so, that'd be fantastic, I think. The other assignment is regarding these needs that you wrote up here. Trying to decide how we should do this. I think, yes?
I was just saying, one of the slides that resonated the most with me, this might be getting a little too in depth early on.
Yeah.
Just the stakeholder analysis, or the one
Yeah.
that had like the 4 bubbles.
Yes.
So maybe breaking apart that like that.
Yeah, exactly. With each need?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. So let me pull up the slide you're talking about. Thanks for the suggestion. I just have to find it.
Seems really beginning.
Yep, here we go. Okay, so what I'd like is your team of 2. Actually, I'm going to have your team of 2 each take the one statement that you wrote up there, and you don't have to meet, but you each evaluate the need statement a little further, okay, on your own. So what that means is you are going to incorporate what happened here in this just short little discussion, and you're going to do another prototype need statement, or a couple if you want. The whole idea is you're going through this process, okay? This is what's important. So for those of you that wrote a better way to assess the cerebral fluid with 3 different potential outcomes, maybe you just decide that you focus on one outcome, or maybe you quantify the outcomes. So they have a specific target. Again, it doesn't have to be exact. This is not an exact science right now. So is that clear? Each of you will take the prototype need statement that you were a part of on the team. You will do some more, Kevin? Oh, you just writing it down?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I thought you were trying to get my attention. Yeah, so you will do more development on the need statement work, a little bit of the scoping, better definition of the outcome. And then, what I want you to do, what was your name again?
Brennan.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. What Brendan recommended, I think is actually a really good idea, is you at least think about, okay, what the disease looks like, what existing treatment options are there, market evaluation, and stakeholder evaluation. And this will tie in nicely with the reading, which is basically, this is 2.1 and this is 2.2. And I don't want you to spend hours on this, but I do want you to make sure you read the chapters, to scope and change the measurement kind of outcome, if you will. Start to hone in on as if you really wanted to do this as a need to work on, okay? These aren't necessarily the ones we're going to work on, but they potentially could be. And then I want to see kind of 4 areas that you write down or type out or whatever, where you've thought through. So for the cerebral fluid one, okay, you've thought through a little bit, at least making sure you have an understanding of what cerebral fluid is, right? I'm not going to like check in and see, okay, you definitely understand. What is that you're working through it as if it's your own, thought, and seeing if, okay, is this actually a good need statement? And we always joke around and we'd say, we try to kill our need statements, right? You want to come up with bad information to say, I don't want to work on this, right? So that's what you're trying to do, is vetting it hard. So maybe you come across something that cerebral fluid is not even apparent in this situation. So then it's like, well, just cross it off and you tell me when we meet, it was completely off, the pathophysiology was off. Or I came up with a different, option, and here it is. So what I'm trying to say is, if you can write like a couple sentences, I would say, or save some information, just enough to show you've done a little bit of diligence on each one. So do that for the disease state fundamentals, existing treatment options. Google, are there any other treatment options for this CSF situation? I'm simplifying it, but market evaluation. This one's a little tricky because there's a lot to it, but if you can just give an idea, if it's kind of like, if you find any numbers of like how large the market, like you type in market size for things and you type in growth rates and sorry, this is kind of rushed to do this part, but just do your best to kind of read in the book a little bit if you can on the market evaluation. And then the last one is stakeholder evaluation. So just try to write down if you think of any unique relationships or insights into the problem that you're trying to solve. And I don't want to make this into like a huge task, but please do your best to do the need statements, optimize them a little bit more, and also get a couple sentences worth of information for next week, or actually this Thursday, so that we can talk everything through. So, sound good?
Yep.
Yeah? All right, good. Thank you, everyone.